Staff, you all set? Public's all set? Good. Call this meeting to order. If you're able, please rise for our national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
This time I'd like to call on Councillor Elliott for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. Niagara Region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandurunk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor. If we could adopt the agenda, there is a change, Council, under confidential items 21.2. It's a memorandum from the CAO that's being pulled this evening. So as amended, if I could have Councillors Hoyle and Elliott move that. Any questions to the agenda or any other changes? All in favor? That's carried. No one's reported any conflicts of interest, just to confirm, seeing none. We have two sets of minutes. We have the public meeting of January 9th, 2024, and the regular meeting of Council February 27th, 2024. If I could have Councillors Bruno and Begg, you move those. Are there any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Reports being brought forward this evening under staff reports 8.1, 8.2, and 9.4 under correspondence. If I could have Councillors Beauregard and Aquilina move the remainder. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, we are under presentations. Council, this evening we have Ellen Shonwell, the Senior Manager of Donor Relations at FACS Niagara Foundation, and she'll be giving the presentation for the for the FACS Niagara Annual Mountain View Lemonade Day. Ellen?
Hi, and thank you for welcoming me to your meeting this evening. I'm very excited to share some information about the third annual Mountain View Lemonade Day for FACS Niagara. This is the third annual event we've had, and we are hoping to once again receive your support and endorsement for this initiative. Hello. My name is Ellen Shonwell. I'm the Senior Manager of Donor Relations for the FACS Niagara Foundation. The foundation has been around for just about 25 years, raising money to support the mission of FACS Niagara. FACS receives government funding for core programs and services, However, the foundation exists to raise funds to further support the children, youth, and families being served by the agency. The money raised by our generous donors supports programs and services for which the agency receives no government funding. So Mountain View Lemonade Day is all about kids helping kids. This idea came from a couple of young people in Niagara who wanted to do something to help other children. As you may recall, Mountain View Lemonade Day invites families to set up lemonade stands in their communities and collect donations to send kids served by FACS to summer camp. Summer camp has so many social and emotional benefits that support children's positive growth and development. Thanks to our title sponsor, the Mountain View Building Group, 100% of the money raised goes to sending deserving kids to camp. So here we have a quote from Anna Boza, who is the CEO of FACS Niagara. She's there in the white shirt, along with the St. Catharines Mayor Matt Cisco, who always participates in the event. And if you can read it, this is a quote from one of our very happy campers. You can see here that this child benefited from all that summer camp has to offer, including making friends, doing fun activities, and learning new things. Last year, with the support of sponsors, families, and municipalities such as yourselves, we were able to raise more than $100,000 to send children to camp. This year, we are hoping for an even bigger and better event that can make a positive difference in the lives of even more families. So what did $100,000 support? Last year, we were able to give more than 500 children in Niagara a summer camp experience. This included attending week-long day camps, overnight camps outside of the region, and we even helped some of our foster parents go camping with their kids. And we were able to provide 150 camp-at-home baskets filled with everything kids need for a fun-filled summer. Family and Children's Services provides a range of services in the community to keep children safe and families strong. We have an average of 400 children in care each month, and we support over 600 families in their own homes. We provide services and supports to them. This means that more than 95% of the families we support receive services in their home and the family remains intact. Of course, the children we're supporting are going through additional challenges that are not typical for kids their age. So summer camp is even more beneficial for them. It allows them to just let loose and make amazing memories. We like to say Lemonade Day is for everyone. Thanks to our sponsors, we are able to provide everything a family needs to host a successful lemonade stand. This includes providing the stand and banner, t-shirts and hats, lemonade concentrate, pitchers for serving, cups, and stickers. You can see in the photo on the slide that families also decorate their own stands and make them fun and engaging for everyone. Our sponsors ensure that 100% every dollar raised goes to sending kids to camp. There are no administrative fees and no direct cost to families who wish to participate. Registration will open on May 1st. More information can be found on our website, or you can call the number on our screen. I'm here because we would be very grateful for Council's support in raising awareness and helping to increase the number of lemonade stands in Port Colborne. Last year, Port Colborne had 2 lemonade stands out of 100, and we challenge you to break that record this year. I'm a resident of Fort Erie, and I'd really love to see a strong participation by South Niagara. So we would really appreciate you sharing this on your social media accounts and through any other communication channels you have. We respectfully ask that you declare Saturday, June 8th, 2024, Mountain View Lemonade Day for FACS Niagara. Thank you very much.
Great, Ellen. Thank you. Appreciate that, and it is a great cause, and we will take up that challenge because I can't let Mayor Cisco outdo us here in Port Colborne. So, Council, any questions to Ellen? Seeing none, again, thanks. But before you do that, if I could have Councillors Hoyle and Elliott move that we receive the presentation and that Council supports the proclamation which the clerk will sign because she has the, are there any questions to that? All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And we'll make sure that between the clerk and the CAO, we let our comms department know, and if we need to get information to you or from you, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council, we do not have any delegations this evening. So I will go right into my mayor's report. I was in Washington, D.C. for 3 days last week for the Great Lakes Day on Capitol Hill. I serve on the board of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, which is a coalition of 250 mayors from Canada and the United States working to protect the Great Lakes. We meet with federal, provincial, and state representatives on both sides of the border whenever there's an issue relating to governance, economics, and science. It was a jam-packed 3 days of addressing Great Lakes issues, plus it was pretty cool to visit the White House, believe me. I met with 7 members of Congress, 3 senators, the minister and principal officer, and our ambassador to the U.S., United States, at the Canadian Embassy. I had an excellent discussion with Mark Cater. He's the Major General of the Army Corps of Engineers, and Mary Frances Repko. She's Deputy Assistant to the President of the United States and also serves as Deputy National Climate Advisor to the President of the United States. I had a great meeting with Administrator Adam Tyndall-Schlitt, who is the head of the American version of our St. Lawrence Seaway. They call it St. Lawrence Seaway Development. I've known Adam for a number of years now. He was the former director at the Port of Milwaukee, so I've known him since 2018 when I became mayor with regards to our port initiatives and our work through the Seaway and the marine industry. I was one of more than a dozen Great Lakes mayors in this group, and it's critical for all of us to safeguard and protect safe drinking water, share responsibility for environmental stewardship, and prepare for coastal threats to all our municipalities because we face them all. Our mayor's group endorsed the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. It's an investment of $500 million per year. One single US dollar of restoration investment generates $3 in economic activity. We had sessions on replacing lead pipes, which is a huge issue within the United States, preventing invasive species, including clean and renewable energy, and we discussed how each of us needs to contribute to sustain the health and prosperity of the Great Lakes. The Brandon Road Interbasin Project, which is being undertaken by the Army Corps of Engineers, is an example. This is a massive undertaking in Illinois, just south of Chicago. Brandon Road Project is a complex ecosystem protection effort designed to prevent the upstream movement of invasive carp and other aquatic nuisance species into the Great Lakes from the Illinois waterway and the Mississippi River Basin. If you all remember zebra mussels and what they did, this is nothing, or that is nothing compared to the invasive carp. There'll be a far more impact, in fact, with a $6 billion of economic activity just in commercial and sport fishing across the Great Lakes and recreational boating. The carp that could get into the Great Lakes system in a very short period of time will decimate it. And I'll put it this way, you won't be able to eat perch, pickerel, trout, salmon. They will decimate the Great Lakes like they have down in the Mississippi Delta. Huge issue. That was one of the biggest issues we spoke to all U.S. representatives when we met with them, with my fellow mayors from both Canada and the U.S. The only thing that's holding this up right now is, quite frankly, is the governor of Illinois will not sign off. The money has been given by the United States federal government, the state of Michigan, who finds this must be done, so they've brought in $100 million for this project. And then prior to this, governor, the state of Illinois put another $100 million. So you can see the amount of money that the Americans are pouring into this, because it's entirely on their property. However, this affects international, which is Canada and the U.S. We are urging that the governor of Illinois sign off on this. It needs to be done within the next 30 days. So as I said, we were dealing with a lot of Wisconsin and Illinois members of Congress and the Senate to make sure we could force that governor to sign off. I'm telling you right now, if they get into the Great Lakes, your economy is shot. So I urge everyone out there, Look at invasive carp in the Mississippi rivers. These things can grow to 80 pounds. When boats go by, it startles them. They literally come flying out of the water. They've killed boaters in the past. Yeah, so there's no more water skiing in areas. Like it's a bad thing, Council, and those watching at home and those here. As I said, $6 billion of economic activity just in fishing and recreational boating on the Great Lakes. So that was one of the huge things we did. Great Lakes are the third largest economy in the world. To balance the ecological and economic health of the Great Lakes, we're launching the economic transformation of the Great Lakes to become a leading blue-green corridor. It will be presented at our annual general meeting in Montreal in May. We covered a lot of ground in 3 days. We know the more we work together, the more we collaborate, the more we will accomplish. The Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative has already established the Green Shipping Corridor Network on the St. Lawrence Seaway. We must do this work for our cities and our Great Lakes. On behalf of members of Council, I applaud the work undertaken by political leaders on each side of the border and by staff of governments, agencies, and business. Members of Council, and I thank our many staff and volunteers for coordinating all kinds of excellent programs and activities at our library, museum, and at the Valet Health and Wellness Center. I realize we're already 2 days into March break, but I hope parents and children have checked out all the events that are available on our website and embark on some of those activities within the city. I hope you will join us for the 2024 season opening of the Welland Canal, Friday, March 22nd in Lockade Park. We're starting very early this year at 7:30 a.m. with a pancake and sausage breakfast prepared by the Fair Trade Committee. We have an impressive roster of special guests to celebrate 195 years since the first version of William Hamilton Merritt's Ditch, which opened in 1829, and 65 years since the St. Lawrence Seaway was completed and opened for business in 1959. Greg Rule, the president of Algoma, will be among our special guests to mark Algoma's 125 years in shipping and railway. Please join me at the annual Mariners service in St. James St. Brendan's Anglican Church this Sunday at 7 p.m. The Reverend Jody and her crew salute the sailors and crew who will pass through our city and sail the Great Lakes. She will attend our top hat ceremony next week to bless the canal and all those people that work on the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway. Easter arrives a little early this year on the weekend of March the 30th. Port Colborne's own tugboat Bunny arrives on the bow of the J.W. Cooper on the Saturday, March the 30th at approximately 9 a.m. We hope all children will bring their parents and friends to the canal along West Street to welcome the jaunty fellow. 15 years ago on March 20th, Corporal Tyler Crooks was killed in action near Kandahar, where he was deployed with November Company, 3rd Battalion with the Royal Canadian Regiment, serving with NATO forces in Afghanistan. Tough guys. March 20th was the day of his death and was also his birthday. He turned 24. He and his brother-in-arms, Master Corporal Scott Vernelli, were killed that day and 5 others wounded when an improvised should get one of you guys to read this. This is tough, guys. That device was detonated near their patrol, which was serving 40 kilometers west of Kandahar City. Each year we tie yellow ribbons, which signify fallen military, to poles on each side of Sugarloaf Street at the Cenotaph and on the lampposts here at City Hall. We've done it every year for the past 15 years. Many of us remember the day his body arrived. In Port Colborne back in 2009, you couldn't fit another person along Clarence or Main Street for thousands who came out to show their respect. So please take a moment, think about Tyler when you see the yellow ribbons, and reflect the loss of one of your own and the loss of our sons and daughters in towns and cities across our country and around the world. Tyler was a really good friend. Thanks. That ends my report this evening. Regional Councillor Davies is not here. Are there any questions with regards to the mayor's report or regional business? Seeing none, thank you. Now on to staff remarks. Mr. CAO.
Sure, I do have a rather long one today, so my thanks in advance for your patience. I will not be at the March 26th council meeting, so this is due to some travel, so this is my last chance to speak to you about the city's plans for the solar eclipse and to the public. It's really important, and I'm going to ask Diana to put a slide up here, and I want council to know the preparations that we've made and why they're so important. So we're just under a month away. I'm going to read some of this because there's a lot here. And I want you to know how we're prepared and what we have planned in Port Colborne. The reason that it's very important is because this is the last time that there will be a total solar eclipse in our area for, sorry to say this, in our lifetimes. And the other reason it's important is because the two red lines there are the outer extremes of where the eclipse will be visible geographically. The blue line, of course, is the best place to watch and the longest period of totality. The star is Port Colborne. The important part, many people probably are just going to have a normal day that day, but many people are very interested in seeing it. And the important part is what is outside of that red line. Durham region, Mississauga, Toronto, Kitchener, London, some parts of Hamilton and Burlington. All the people, many people who live in those population centers might wish to come south into the red lines, much of which is water. There's not very much land to accommodate all of those people. So regional emergency management has been preparing for years for this. We've been preparing for a long time too. We have a slate of events, and I'll run them down here, planned for our community. We think we'll have some visitors from other communities too. We're certainly not trying to compete with Niagara Falls, which is advertising itself as the best place to watch the eclipse in Niagara. They're thinking they'll welcome up to 1 million people on April 8th. That's not what we're trying to do. In fact, we're trying to lessen the impact of traffic from visitors to our community. We do have some events. Those events are open to everyone, whether you're from Port Colborne or not. But we're a little bit afraid that people will try to get to Niagara Falls and not make it, and then go to the lake to see the eclipse, and how we can move those people about our community. Basically, there's a front row seat in Port Colborne, an excellent place to watch the eclipse from. As I said, we're not trying to compete with Niagara Falls, but we think people might say, let's avoid the crowds and go to Fort Erie, Wainfleet, Port Colborne, and so on. We could see significant crowds, traffic, and eclipse-related impacts. That said, we're not sure if it will happen. We could have bad weather, we could have cloudy weather, and then there will be less people. The converse of that is, many people might be waiting to see what the weather is like, and if it is clear and sunny, make their way down here without previously having planned to do so or researched places to go. We are activating our emergency operations center. It'll be based out of the fire hall. So they were not declaring an emergency. Only the mayor can declare an emergency, and something would have to happen for that decision to be made at the recommendation of staff. But we will be activating our emergency operations center. We are working with partners like Niagara Regional Police on emergency preparedness messages for residents. For example, we're advising people to be prepared for crowds, lines, and traffic. If you're going out to take things with you for a long visit, like water and snacks, first aid supplies, fill up your gas tank, get groceries, and run errands before April 8th. Make sure you have eclipse glasses. I'll speak about that more a little bit later. Check ahead for travel conditions and road closures. Plan for childcare, as most schools are closed on April 8th. Make sure children know how to view the eclipse safely, and check the city's website, portcolborne.ca, for service changes, closures, and other important information. We are going to make some operational changes at the city. City Hall will be open, but because we intend to redeploy staff like we do during canal days, some services might not be available. So for example, we use planning staff as by law enforcement officers during canal days, right? And we may decide to do something like that. So a meeting with a planner might be better scheduled for the Friday or the Tuesday. There will be some minor parking restrictions to support the movement of emergency vehicles in the streets near H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park and Sugarloaf Harbor Marina. I'll describe those now. Parking restrictions on Steele Street, Sugarloaf Street, Fielden Avenue, Elm Street, King Street, and one side of Clarence Street. Specific details will be announced by our communications department in the coming days. Our communications team is currently working on some materials to make sure residents in this area are aware of the parking restrictions, and we will have plenty of signs and pylons out before and during the event. If needed, we will be doing a hand-delivered door knocker and a social media post. We will close the public boat launch from the evening of April 7th to the morning of April 9th. The boat launch is typically not open, the dock is not installed, but it is also not restricted. Normally, at this time of year, the marina is not open for until later in April. We're encouraging residents and visitors to enjoy the eclipse from the safety and comfort of dry land. Due to the increased number of people and vehicles expected, our emergency response resources will be focused on potential emergencies on dry land. We also want to maximize the parking space at the boat launch, so boat trailers will not be permitted in the lot on April 8th. A temporary barricade will be installed during the closure period. We will also be posting signs well in advance at that location, so frequent users will see it in advance and communicating to the community. In our communications to date, we have recommended residents gather with family, friends, and fellow sky gazers in a number of prime viewing locations across Port Colborne, including H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park, Sugarloaf Harbor Marina, West Street and downtown Port Colborne, Lock 8 Gateway Park, Nickel Beach, Centennial Cedar Bay Beach, and of course, your own front yard or backyard is a great choice. One thing not to miss is you don't need to get to a park, you don't need to get to the beach to see the eclipse. It can be seen from anywhere, even the side of the road in a traffic jam, if you have no trees and buildings in the way. That said, so there will be some staff at these locations where there normally wouldn't be staff in the daytime to help with parking and garbage and so on. Our primary designated viewing area will be at the Valley Health and Wellness Center, where we will have several family-friendly solar eclipse-related activities, including a planetarium show. Visitors will have the chance to immerse themselves in the wonders of the cosmos. I should say that, in the wonders of the cosmos, as planetarium staff will share constellation stories, northern lights, insights, and so much more inside an immersive, inflatable 4K planetarium. Online registration is required to participate in the planetarium show. I'll give the website at the end. Solar tours in the 4K planetarium. Stargazing enthusiasts can enjoy a tour of the universe with a live presenter, explore the powerful sun, learn about the eclipse, how the aurora work, and so much more. Also requires online registration. Telescope tours. I hope I'm saying this word right. Have your chance to view the eclipse using a 10-inch Dobsonian telescope. Astronomy guides, so we will have experts there, will provide hands-on telescope experiences, a chance for attendees to view sunspots and solar flares using solar filters to ensure safety. Let's talk science. Almost done. Join science experts from Brock University to spark curiosity and strengthen STEM connections. Learn about solar eclipse safety by creating a pinhole camera, like the mayor did in school, that can be used to safely view the eclipse, or by creating eclipse art that will project crescents during the eclipse. The library and museum will also be on hand at the Valley Health and Wellness Center with interactive stations to learn about the solar eclipse through crafts and activities, plus a mobile pop-up library. There will be a free community skate and a free community open swim at the YMCA. Finally, the last update relates to solar eclipse glasses. The city is currently giving away free solar eclipse glasses for residents with a Participate Pass or a public library card at the library. Residents can visit either City Hall or the library to pick theirs up today. We only have a limited amount of glasses, so it's on a first-come, first-served basis. There are glasses available from other locations in the city at a cost, and we do not want to compete with those private sector vendors. If you get your glasses from somewhere else, make sure they are ISO certified from a reputable vendor and read the instructions on the glasses. Do not use them if they are scratched or damaged. Do not use ordinary sunglasses or do-it-yourself filters. Make sure children keep their glasses on properly. I think this goes without saying, but just in case, it's important to remember that you should never look directly at the uncovered sun without protection because it can cause retinal burns. There's no pain sensors in your retinas, so you don't know when it's being happened until after it's happened. So we advise everyone to please be careful. I know that's a long update. I did want to make sure council and the community were well informed about what we are planning and how we are preparing for a potential influx of visitors. The website is the place to go for all the latest information as well as to register for those events, and that is www.portcolborne.ca/solar eclipse. And that is all. I will answer questions if there are any.
Questions from Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, just two things. I was asked why you need a participate pass or a library card to get the glasses. Why you just couldn't show your driver's license or tax bill or something like that. And I had no idea why.
Well, that's a great question, and I wish I would have asked staff and been prepared for that. We are trying to drive people towards renewing their library card and getting membership up in the library. And of course, the participate pass is your beach pass, but it's also, we have high hopes for it to be used in other aspects of city operations, including recreation. It does prove that you're a Port Colborne resident, but so does your driver's license. So I can't say that that's the main reason, but we would like to increase the usership of the participate pass and the library card.
Okay.
Councillor?
I'll try to pass that along. Second question, with the anticipated numbers of people, have we had a discussion with the Seaway regarding bridges and getting back and forth with emergency vehicles? And because the Seaway opens on the 22nd, there may be a number of ships going through, so how do we manage traffic?
Sure, that's a great question. So we do have a reasonably thick operations manual that I didn't bring with me today that sort of defines how we're going to handle various aspects of operations, including, cleanup, parks. The important thing to remember is that life does go on during the eclipse, the period before and after. There could be a water main break, there could be an emergency call, there could be any number of things, potholes that need to be fixed around the municipality and so on. The fire chief does have detailed plans of how he intends to deploy staff and vehicles. So I think what we're going to do, I don't have it right in front of me, is have vehicles on both sides of the canal to begin with. We might actually take some fire apparatus to the Health and Wellness Center and dispatch it from there if there is the need to respond to a call that's already on the east of the canal.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Excellent report. Through you to the CAO. If people bring in their participate pass, can they get it as like for a couple? So can one member of a couple come in and get two? Or five, or how many is that?
Sure, so we actually, each person in a household can have a participate pass, and that's, if you're in a non-eclipse day, if you're going to the beach, you could take more than one vehicle and use it for parking. But the maximum number of glasses is 5 though.
Okay.
So.
Councillor Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was viewing Fort Erie's plan for the solar eclipse, and so a lot of the roads leading into beach area are being closed, and I'm wondering if something similar is planned for my ward in particular, where there's a lot of beach roads that people might be venturing to, similar to COVID, where there was an influx of people.
That's a great question. Through your worship to Councillor Aquilina, that's a great question. One of the things that we are trying to do here is lessen the impact on the community and sort of do a little bit of social engineering of the way people behave by having these, by having this message that you don't need to be on the beach to see the eclipse. You're going to be able to see it from just about anywhere where there's a line of sight to the sky. And having these sort of city-sanctioned events, we're hoping that we can attract that. I can say that Curtis from Roads does come to our CERT meetings. That's the special events group that plans Canal Days and is working on the eclipse and so on, and the fire chief in Niagara Regional Police. So I haven't prepared him for this, but I'm not sure if Steve knows if Curtis has any plans for barricades at road ends.
Steve?
Through you, Your Worship. So similar to fire or EMS response, we're going to have multiple crews on both sides of the canal just for response periods, and then people actively patrolling just the areas, and the road ends would be included in that as well.
Further questions? Super. Just, there are, even though it's limited here, for what you get when you present your pass. If you don't have a pass, come in, bring your tax bill, bring your driver's license. We'll sign you up for your card for participate. Also, we have vendors within the city. Our local businesses are selling these. So be leery of those that are trying to resell these glasses online at exorbitant premium. Believe me, we've already caught a couple people. When they ask $15 and the local store guy's only asking $5, support the store guy. So be leery of people trying to resell their glasses. Anyways, Madam Clerk, anything to report? No? Steve?
Through Your Worship, good evening, everyone. Just a few updates for council tonight. So we have the first one's regarding the Neff Street Storm Sewer Project. We're happy to say that the contract has been awarded to Rankin Construction. They'll be completing the project, and currently the work is on hold because there's a permit to take water that's required from the province. So we have an application in for that, and we're just waiting final approvals. We have expedited it, so we're trying to get through it as fast as possible. And Rankin has also confirmed that as soon as we do get that permit, they're going to be ready to mobilize with the team right away. So we are expecting it late March to early April at this point, but it's all subject to change based on the approval of that permit. So we are on top of the province and trying to get it as soon as possible, and that will be coming forward, and we'll let council know as soon as we get the permitting, construction can commence. On to further good news with the city's sewer lining contract, which focuses on rehabilitation of the sanitary sewers, sanitary sewer system, and laterals, has just been awarded to Capital Sewer Service, and pre-construction meeting has already been held. The contractor is planning to start the preliminary works at the end of this month, which is great. To keep it going, the Lions Field improvement tender closed yesterday, and staff are in the process of finalizing the contract agreement with the low bidder. The price came in within budget, and the design and construction is going to start in early April. Construction will be finished by July. So during that period, obviously people are still going to be playing baseball, but most of the work is along the perimeter of the field, so we'll still be able to do the two concurrently. Next, Councillor Begg, you and I were actually speaking a little earlier today about the sanitary sewer CCTV project that we have ongoing right now. The contractor is currently working in Ward 1, and there were a handful of properties that ended up experiencing water coming back up their laterals as the main lines were being flushed. So it does happen on the rare occurrence. I think we had 5 spots out of the 3,400 homes that we had so far. So it does happen. What we would do if that does happen to your home, we would ask that you call in, let us know what's happening, and then we can try to help better guide or advise on how to prevent that from happening in the future. Right now we do have about 16 kilometers that are left within Ward 1. So although I want to say this won't happen again, there's the potential might come up, so we'd love to speak to you if it does happen to you. But it is very rare, and we do get our contractors to flush at the lowest possible amount as well. So now I know the councillors know this, but just so the public knows, the city does own its own railway. It's actually operated by GeoRail, and the city's rail operator is currently conducting a review of the rail crossings, which is leading to a few recommendations that are coming forward on based on the Transport Canada passive crossing guidelines. This also includes the installation of stop signs at the rail in specific locations. So the rail company has already installed a sign at Kent Street, just west of Elm, and we're awaiting results on other crossings. So we'll keep council updated as those start coming through. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Mr. Long? It's okay. You want to bring it up under council remarks? Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick one. There's been a couple of provincial announcements in Niagara over the last couple of weeks regarding St. Catharines and Welland receiving funding from the province's Building Faster Fund in recognition of their ability to achieve certain housing targets. Just a quick note to council that Port Colborne is not in the same category as those municipalities. However, there is a percentage of that fund that has been earmarked for smaller rural municipalities, and we're just waiting for the details of that process, for that application process to be announced, and then we intend to submit an application because staff believe that we have lots to celebrate here as well in terms of the progress that we've made in terms of achieving housing targets.
Great, thanks, Mr. Long. Ms. Landry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple updates for council this evening. We do have an open house planned for our new official plan. That will be on March 27th here in council chambers between 5:30 and 7:30. There will be notification going out to the public via social media, our website, as well as to consultants, stakeholders, developers, etc., letting them know about the open house. I will also send all of council an invitation. I hope you can make it. It's going to be a very interactive session where we can receive feedback from the public and find out what their priorities are as we move forward with our new official plan. The other item I had was Councillor Elliott at the previous council meeting requested that the zoning bylaw explicitly addresses parking structures in terms of the setback. Our CIO did indicate that once we complete the official plan, we will then be bringing forward a new zoning bylaw. And through that process, we most definitely can explicitly indicate the setbacks requirements to parking structures. I did want to note that because it's considered a structure under our zoning bylaw, the setbacks do apply right now as they are, as if it was a building. So currently, the setbacks that we have in the zoning bylaw would apply, but if it's, to make it more clear, if that would be helpful, we can have specific kind of regulations and setbacks for parking structures, and we can look at doing that through our new zoning bylaw. If there's any questions, happy to answer. And that's everything.
Thanks. Now on to councillors' remarks. Councillor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended an event at Guildhall last week. Last week with the director of museum and one of the employees, Sloan McDowell, who are both supporting the seniors advisory group or committee. And we just did a quick presentation on what the committee structure is, and then Stephanie was able to talk about volunteering opportunities for people to participate in. But I also took the opportunity to bring up or use it as a platform to find out from seniors. There was almost 80 of them at the event. What they're looking for from Port Colborne, what ideas they have, so that I could bring it back to the committee. But two things came up that I don't think the committee can really move forward. One was transit, which I think is out of our control a bit as well. But the other thing that was quite a hot topic, which I'm going to direct to Steve for Public Works, is accessible parking and the need for additional accessible parking. The specific spot that was mentioned was in front of Walters and Neptune. There's I think 3 or 4 parking spots that are there already, just kind of in a block, and there's only one handicap parking spot. And what they've indicated is that a lot of times people are there longer than the 2-hour limit, and so it leaves them kind of searching for other additional parking spots. So I'm coming to you to see if there's a possibility that those 4 spots maybe could be designated as handicap spots, with the other ones remaining for, regular vehicles to park in. I wasn't sure.
Steve?
Yes, through you, your worship. I believe it was, I want to say 1 or 2 years ago, where we ended up doing a review of all of West Street for the accessible spots, and it was sufficient at that time. That doesn't mean we can't go above that too and add more stalls, so we'd be happy to do that. If that's council's wishes, we'd be more than happy to make one of those an accessible spot.
I'd appreciate, I don't know if Steve brings something back price-wise to council or how that works, but, okay, thank you.
Yeah, cost-wise, it doesn't need to come back to us, but I'm sure you
Okay.
can keep in connection with you, so you can take that to your committee also, but
Okay,
Steve will let us know when that moves ahead. Thanks.
okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Borgard?
May I address?
Certainly, yeah.
Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Aquilina, just on the transit question, you are 100% correct that in the last couple of years, the responsibility for transit was uploaded to the region. So we have regional transit, and unfortunately, we don't have a Port Colborne representative on the steering group, which is a non-elected group that recommends to the transit board. If anyone knows of anyone, that is an open recruitment, it's on the city's website. We would love to have a Port Colborne representative. Usually it's good if they're a transit user, and I know sometimes it's hard for a transit user in Port Colborne, living in Port Colborne, to get to meetings at the region. We do have the on-demand transit service. I know it's not the same as a bus. In some ways it doesn't match up to what a bus can provide, but in some ways it's better. There are drawbacks. It does require you to have a smartphone, an app that you can use. It does require you to have an online payment method like a credit card or Interact to load bus fares onto the app. But the good side is it's almost a door-to-door service. It's not like the old Port Colborne loop where you had to get yourself to those number of streets that the transit bus sort of rotated through. So you could get it from, for example, a person in the urban area working at Shirkston Shores for $3, the same price as a bus ticket in another municipality. You can get the on-demand van to come to your house. So I know that's not ideal, and sometimes if it's already occupied elsewhere, there's a wait and so on. But it is there for seniors and people of all ages to use, but it would be very helpful if we had Port Colborne representation on that steering group.
Councillor?
So the biggest concern that these people that participated in the event raised was that they indicated that the on-demand service doesn't take you to the hospitals. And so like if they have an appointment at the hospital, they can't use the on-demand service. And so so they were trying to figure out if there was like some sort of community where people could volunteer like they do with, the cancer institutes. And, but I said, that gets into insurance requirement. Like, so I didn't want to go down that path, but it would be something to consider. And I don't know if we could post something like that on the city website or Facebook, and I can ask our members on the committee to post it on our Seniors Advisory Committee Facebook page as well, that they're looking for resident volunteers for that committee.
Through your worship to Councillor Aquilina, if it's okay, I'll take that back and we'll talk to my staff. Whoever's the acting CAO at the next meeting here, I can get them to report back on the 26th.
That's odd that you say that they won't take. That's, yeah, well, let's look into that. You're still serving there, aren't you? You're still the council rep, right? Yeah. If you can take that to your next meeting, maybe? When is it? If you can ask that question. Just further that, we've passed this already, but we did receive as a piece of correspondence from Niagara Regional Transit how transit in Port Colborne is working now. As of Saturday, December the 30th, which was the last day they took these, so in essence this is for 2023, Our daily ridership totaled 21,474 rides last year. The old days of that little tiny bus would have been a few thousand. That included 18,251 trips. The average wait time was about 31 minutes. And the this was inter on demand, so that's within the city. The outside of the city on demand wait time was only 12 minutes. So their times have gotten way better, but that does surprise me what you said. But I mean, like our ridership is going way up. It's huge. So, and I mean, that's 4 corners of our city where the old bus used to just do a very small loop within the city. So it's far better. But anyways, we'll, between Eric with him on the committee and then when I'm at council, I'll talk to the chair, Mayor Cisco, too about it. So that doesn't sound right to me. But
And it wasn't just one person, a couple of people had mentioned it. That's the only reason why I bring it up.
Thank you. Councillor Baggett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a few things. First one, talking about the region, is Niagara Regional Health going to be at the Golden Puck Room talking about the hospitals? I thought I saw something scheduled.
Not the Niagara region, Niagara Health.
Niagara Health. Okay.
Niagara Health will be there on the, I'll tell you right now, I think it's the 21st.
You're right.
It's in my calendar. Yep. NH at the community meeting at the Golden Puck Room. It starts at 6:30, goes to 8:30. They're going to do a presentation to the public.
Okay. Good.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yeah. The other, Steve was talking about the railway crossing stop signs. I saw it on social media the first time, and I live on Charlotte Street, so I went down Kent Street, and sure enough, there was 2 little stop signs there. The miniature stop signs on the crossing posts, and I didn't know if they expect everybody to stop. Like the train that goes through there once a week, and then I started thinking, they put that on every railway crossing. You can't get to downtown Port Colborne without crossing through one of those. Like you got on Fielded and Park, you got on Clarence Street near the regional reps restaurant. You got on Charlotte Street, you got on Kent Street, Ash Street. And Catherine, like you can't get in downtown without these stop signs. And for once a week train, it seems really dumb to put these stop signs there. Like I was under understanding that somebody from the train actually gets off the train when they cross the road in downtown area and stops the stands in front of the traffic and stops the traffic until the train goes through the intersection. That's how it used to be, I know for sure, on Clarence Street. Somebody always got off the train, so maybe Steve can look into that. But it's going to be it's kind of asinine to put stop signs at every railway crossing in our.
Got to remember, Councillor, it is a federal transportation directive. This isn't our rules or regional or the province. This is a federal rule. So the safety company that's working with GeoRail, I mean, we ultimately own the rail line. They're our tenant on the rail line, but they're the ones that look after safety because they're the rail operator. This is a federal rule that they're following. So I don't think it's going to be on every crossing. That's why they're monitoring certain crossings. I think it has to do with sight lines and size, is it not, Steve?
Yep, through your worship, you're exactly right. So my understanding is it's largely going to be based off sight lines and the sight distances that you can see from the roadway. So those will be the impacted intersections. So not every intersection will be impacted, but it's definitely worth the conversation to see if there's any alternatives to the stop signs in those locations. So we'll follow up with the rail operator just before any more might appear and see if there are other solutions.
Okay, thank you, because we have enough problem people stopping at stop signs, and that's the regular size one. These are half the size, so they're only going to stop half as much. So, the other item, actually on the way here today, we went down Field Street in Ash towards the park, and it was great to see contractor working on our sidewalks, replacing some bad sidewalks. So it's great to see that beginning of the year. I really appreciate that. And I thank Steve for the talk about the sewer, the upflow of the toilets. One poor woman had her second floor bathroom toilet overflow a little bit, and being a senior age, it was quite a difficult for her to do it up. And talking to Joe before the meeting, is it my understanding that the one-way valves are put on all new housing now?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. Since I believe 1990 is when the bylaw was enacted for that.
That's great news, because this woman says when she talked to Tommy from the city, he suggested she put one in. She told me, she says, I'm 91 years old. I ain't gonna be alive the next time they flush it 5 years from now. But I said, hey, my grandmother lived to be 103, you never know. So.
I think it's been mid to late 80s, it's been under the building code
Yeah.
in Ontario, to have a check valve on your sewer
Yeah.
line.
That's great. The last one, Mr. Mayor, 2 weeks ago I mentioned about putting out a service request if somebody wants something to be done by the city, and it's to the top right-hand corner of the our webpage, and I put one in a few days ago regarding 2 lateral line valves leaking on the residential house. I think people were removing, somebody might have drove it over there or something, and the neighbor actually directed me to, told me about the leak, and good to see they're both fixed this morning. And I don't think it was because my name was on the request service, because I use Eric Beauregard's name, so it got done really quick, and I do really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Denise, this just came up from your comments about Councillor Elliott's question. So normally, if you're going to do a OP review, it takes some time to adopt it, and then often the zoning bylaws get done after that. So to the point that was raised, I mean, that could be a year away by the time you get to the zoning bylaw. So I'm just wondering if the current bylaw that you state that's there, through it being a building, a parking garage, is that something that likely would be just codified there because it's a good rule now, or do you anticipate that there would be a dramatic change in that?
Denise?
Through the mayor to the councillor, just to clarify your question, are you looking to see if it's something we could address now instead of down the road?
Not necessarily. If what you have now, classifying it as a building, seems to suffice and is good practical planning and distancing, then maybe it's tweaking it and it goes into the new zoning bylaw. If it's dramatically poor, I think probably that's why the councillor even asked about it. Should we do something? Can we do something in the interim?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor, I think the setbacks and looking at a parking structure as a structure and using the setbacks that are in the zoning now is appropriate. I don't think that we necessarily need to define it, but if it's something that council is interested in being more explicit or looking at having additional setbacks than what a regular building would have, then that's something that we could explore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Szapowski. Steve, I just touched base with you prior to the start of the meeting, but this has come up, for quite a while. We've asked for good reporting on building permits in Port Colborne, and that's come through Matt, and it's working quite well. When I look at it, it's interesting to see what is developing, but some of the things that I see on there, I'm concerned that it maybe slips through the cracks on our high priority of lateral leaks, both on the sanitary side and on the water side. And I believe I recalled hearing at one time that if someone has a demolition permit, and I'll use some examples, Door Metals recently, Elizabeth Street, and I'm not sure the cross street where there was that house abandoned for a number of years, that's been torn down. And I know the Lutheran church there at George Street is being torn down. It was my understanding, so those two of those three have happened relatively recently. It was my understanding that in that process, you all at Public Works were going to get a notification from building when a demolition permit was issued, and to that end you could ensure that it was shut off at the curb stop, but more importantly we were now going to use that opportunity to have the person applying for the demolition permit and the property owner to take that line right back to the main. And what I've noticed is that in those tear downs that I've just spoken about, there is no break in the asphalt out to the main. So example, on Welland, Dwar Metals comes down, they shut it off there. I mean, my concern, I think it was the reason to do this is, I mean, if you get an excavator in there and they've shut it off at the curb stop, but they're digging out foundations and everything and pulling on that lateral, there's a good opportunity that that's doing something on the public side. So is that enshrined right now in our rules that a demolition permit jettisons a cost to the developer, to the demolisher, the owner of that property, to take that main or that lateral back to the main?
Steve?
Yeah, through your worship to Councilor Bruno. So what we have done in the past is require the developer to decommission the lines, and that would involve taking them right back to the main. Similar to what you've said, during many construction projects, when an excavator is coming by, there is the chance that they'll hook onto a service, and the slightest pull will sometimes pull them right out of the main or an adjacent piece of pipe. So there has been a number of developments, although they don't happen too frequently in the past 3-4 years. The ones that we have required to come back to the main. And what I will suggest is, we were talking to Denise and Adam regarding the municipal consent permits just recently right now. And what we'll do is we'll come back with just an overview of those locations to make sure that that did happen, or the reasoning why it didn't happen. In certain circumstances, if they're going to be reused, the exact same mains and they're in good condition, we would allow them to stay in there and then reconnect. But we wouldn't want to have multiple lines going to the same property for those circumstances where there's the chance that there could be excessive leaks on the water side or infiltration coming in through an abandoned lateral.
So just to follow up on that, I'm concerned that have we lost the opportunity that somebody has come in, got a demolition permit, tore down those buildings, and now are we going to go to them and say, oh, as a matter of course, when you do that, when will you be finishing the asphalt cut and the removal of that, and how do we collect? So, you know, like we've talked about being diligent about all these little things, and here's an opportunity that somebody is spending money to put up a new building, they're spending money to do the demo, and now we're at the short end of, you know, a $3,000 job to go to the main. We're either going to pick it up when they should be picking it up. So I guess a two-parter here is, and is the process now that if I come in for a demolition permit, and I pay at the counter at building, are you getting a copy of that? And Tommy, to know what's going on?
Yeah, through your worship. So what would happen is a municipal consent or building permit would be processed within planning, and then if there's a work order that needs to happen, it would come to the Public Works Department.
So those buildings of which I spoke, Dwar Meadows, Elizabeth Street, Lutheran Church that's filed, you already have one of those?
Through your worship, I'll have to double check in the work order software just to see if we did get anything. Again, it could have been a situation where they're reusing the services too. I'd have to look a little more in depth into the exact locations.
I'd just like to drill down a little further on that. So the other side of what's on that building report that's very helpful is a WL or SL. So it's a sewer lateral or it's a water lateral. So if you think about the residential profile in Port Colborne, if somebody is on that list, it's because they've elected to change the private lateral on their side because they know it's leaking or they know it's 65 years old. I would like to see us have a fund, because it seems to me that the age of the lateral on the public side is probably the same age as the lateral on the private side, or close to it. I mean, just think of a new house now in Westwood, right? Somebody puts it in 70 years from now, right? The guy changes it on the private side. What are we doing about the public side? So I'd love to see a program where, you know, if that's happening, unless that lateral or that street or that main is, and you have to, I guess, scientifically figure out a number, is like 20 years old or less. I mean, we should be in there with $5,000 to every one of those to match, because it seems crazy to have a same-aged private lateral fixed and the public lateral stay, and ours could be leaking too, and we don't know it. So if we're going to get serious about that, and on both the tear downs and that, I'm just wondering, and maybe this is Denise's department, can we go back and look at like 5 years of demolition permits, 5 years of water laterals, 5 years of sewer laterals? And if we have to do that at budget this year, let's go back and go over all those places. I mean, it's not a great example where the citizen does the right thing and we're not doing it on our side. And I think if you're going to build that relationship and improve it, we've got to be a partner in this and do it at the same time. So I'm wondering if you'd be able to come back with a report on all of that for which I just spoke.
Steve?
Through your worship, we can definitely report back on that. I can say that there was one that just recently happened to that exact circumstance. So we have started with that thought train of if there are an aged pipe, we are going to replace it at the same time. I believe it was on Clarence Street that just happened.
Okay.
So the city did come in and say, you know what, we're going to do it at the same time. And that would be the same thought train on other properties as well moving forward.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I got one more. So this goes to, I've been recently made aware that there may have been a building in Port Colborne that isn't recording the proper amount of water usage. And upon investigation, the usage was artificially low. And again, my memory serves me correct. When we did those last meters or since then, I had been told that these new meters, you were allowed to put a parameter on it so that if all of a sudden somebody's water usage takes a nosedive, particularly commercial or large buildings, or conversely goes the other way, that it triggers a message. So I had called the water department about this, and they say, well, it's a relatively mammoth task. We just have to look at our billing records in a month, but often we don't have time to look at if there's been spikes. And I'm thinking in 2024, and with new meters, we should know if there's an abnormality happening and be on top of it. So I'm just wondering if you could lay out if that does happen, it can happen, what would it take?
Yeah, through you, your worship. So right now we have, council actually approved in the last budget period, the installation of antennas that are going up to read the meters automatically. So with that, right now we have 2 meters installed. There will need to be a third one that's installed at the north end of the city to make sure we're picking up all of the addresses in the city. But after that happens, we will have the full reporting on a continual basis coming in. There is a little bit of manual work, but it's not too difficult because we're automating templates right now to basically export the data from Neptune 360 and then push it in and compare it to regional data of what we're actually buying, so we can throw that layer into it. But then we can also see if the water usage is above 10%, 15, 20% of the typical as we set standards. So that is definitely possible. It's just waiting for that third meter to come online so we have all the data and can do full reporting, and then trying to automate it the best as possible.
Is that just in a zone or for each property?
Through your worship, it'll be per property, so each meter in itself.
You'll be able to accomplish this?
Correct.
Yeah. Great, if you could just let us know when it's complete too.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Elliott, I know you want to make a motion to put in a 10-minute timer for councillors. We can put a clock just like we have at the region. Is that what you want?
4 minutes.
Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Steve. I was going to ask the question on the field and sidewalk if the locates where we were going to repair the sidewalk, but we're talking about Sugarloaf to Ash on the east side of the street. That's the sidewalks we're redoing.
Through you, your worship, I have an email of some locations. I believe Fielden is on there. Right now they're focusing on larger sections of repairs. There's still a lot of smaller sections, and then there will be a couple block lengths coming up to.
That should be a block length.
Yeah.
Because when I was walking down to take a look at our other issue, it was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I'm surprised that anybody can walk on that stretch of sidewalk right from Sugarloaf right down to Ash, so. Thanks, Counselor. I was gonna ask that question anyways. And then I'm finished with you. I bothered Steve enough on the phone, so, just a clarification, through you, Mr. Mayor, with Denise, about the parking structure. And my issue was, and you said that the parking structures are backs in the bylaws, right? And the issue that I had was, in the official plan for 650 Main West, it says, and this is the part that got me, and I had to go back to, because I had to think, did I read it wrong? It says now, the side and rear yard reductions are included as the parking structure is attached to the building, meaning that the setbacks of the apartment apply. The zoning bylaw does not provide for setbacks to parking structures. As a result, the setbacks for the apartment building were used instead. So I was under the impression that that meant that the parking structure isn't there for implementing setbacks?
Through the mayor to the councillor, so I think this will perhaps help. If the parking structure was not attached to the building, it would still have setback requirements, and we would still use the same setback requirements that we have for the buildings. So no matter what, because it's considered a structure, then you would apply the same setbacks that we would for the apartment building.
Okay, so it's just the wording that was confusing me, that's, because it sounded like we weren't going to use the setbacks from the parking structure, but from the apartment building, as if this parking garage structure, whatever you want to call it, wasn't there. That's how it seemed, what it seemed to say.
Through the mayor to the councillor, I think the intent of those few sentences was just to explain that we don't explicitly have parameters or setbacks for parking structures, but it is considered part of the building, and therefore it's a continuous piece. It's the building and the parking. It's all one component.
Okay.
So then the setbacks would apply to the nearest point, from the property line to the nearest point of the building / parking structure.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that.
All set? Good. Councillor Hora?
Through the mayor to Steve, I hear nothing but good comments about the upgrades that are done to Victoria Park. The other day there was more than a bunch of kids playing there and families, so just wanted to pass that along. I only had a couple complaints about speeding and off-road vehicles. I guess it's that time of year now. On Bell Street from Davis to Welland, and then Ferris from Fraser to Nichols. So if you can pass that on to probably NRP, or the mayor can pass on NRP.
Yeah, if you,
Both those
actually,
areas?
Tim, if you can email me that, I'll pass along to the staff sergeant.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Oh, oops, sorry. On to items requiring separate discussion. Our first one is the City of Port Colborne traffic calming policy. Recommendation that Public Works Department Report 2024-44 be received. The traffic calming policy attached as Appendix A of Public Works Report 2024-44 be approved. We are having a presentation on this. Mr. Shapowski, or is this Joe? Joe.
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, we do have a report and a policy attached, and RV Anderson is here tonight to present a presentation on some information regarding the policy.
Okay, welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's your mic right there.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. My name is Rao Marti, along with Nick Palamba from RV Anderson. here to make a presentation for the traffic calming policy for the city of Port Colborne. So the sections are divided into why we are here, what's the purpose and mission of the traffic calming policy, and how this that is evolved. Sorry. So why we are here and what's the mission and purpose of the traffic calming policy, and how that policy is being developed from the best practices and the guidelines that are there, and what are the details about the policy. That's how the whole process is taken care. And in the end, we have the flow chart from the beginning of the process to the end stages of the implementation evaluation. That's how that whole presentation is taken care. So why we are here, the city staff received the various complaints from the residents regarding speeding, excessive volumes, and overall the neighborhood safety. So that's a starting point. And the staff is using the resources available, such as the additional signage, pavement marking, driver feedback boards, and the additional concern to address the concerns. So in order to streamline the process, the city has retained R.V. Anderson to prepare the traffic calming policy document to improve the efficiencies, effectiveness related to traffic calming and safety. So the presentation is aimed to provide insight to the traffic calming policy, develop for the proposed traffic calming policy, and to provide the avenue for members to the council to ask any questions related to traffic calming and specifically details set out in the proposed policy. So we present the things, and at the end you can have questions related to that. So the purpose and the mission of the traffic calming policy is to provide the framework for initiate, develop, assessing the traffic and safety, implementing and monitoring the traffic calming measures for laneways and the local and collector roadways within the city of Port Colborne. And it serves as the guidance for the future traffic projects. So to outline those, taking those policy documents, applying and to streamline the implementation of those projects. So the mission for the traffic calming program is to improve the community safety, preserve community's character, and enhance the local neighborhood by working with the residents. So the policy is towards aiming to work with the residents and improve the safety within the neighborhood. These are the purpose and mission for the traffic calming policy. So what is traffic calming policy? So traffic calming is a combination of the measures that reduce the negative effects of motor vehicle use and alter the driver behavior and improve the conditions for non-motorized users, street users. That's the traffic calming policy. And measures, normally they are categorized into two. One is the passive and the physical. The passive means it's very quick to implement and easy to install, and it's with a typically lower implementation cost. And the physical means it is permanent in nature, and it involves more resources and takes long timelines. In addition to the traffic calming elements, these are the traffic control devices and programs that regulates, warn, guide, inform, enforce, and educate the motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. So, just presentation purpose, there are a few things I would put: the paved the sidewalks and the speed humps. That's here. So the traffic calming, that is basically integrates the role for developing the traffic management program for the streets, working with the city staff, utilizing the basically 3 E's, which is the education, engineering, and the enforcement. These are the 3 E's that are encompassing the traffic calming implementation process. So the engineering is nothing but physical measures, traffic calming devices constructed to lower the speeds, improve the safety, and otherwise reduce the impacts of the automobile and increase automobiles. Education is to identify the need for the traffic calming through the information sharing, awareness raising, targeting the drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists regarding the safety and best ways to share the roadway. The enforcement is to target the police enforcement that supports the neighborhood goals. These are the 3 E's basically that aims to implement the traffic calming here. So what we are trying to accomplish is there are the 5 major operational objectives for the traffic calming that will address. First, in the 85th percentile, which means it's very simple terms, the speed at which the 85% vehicles travel at or below the particular street. That's how the 85th percentile is defined, and must be greater than the 110 kilometers per hour over the posted speed. That's one of the criteria for to accomplish that, to reduce the cut-through traffic and reduce the collisions and improve the safety of the motor vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists. And the traffic calming is aimed to adequate access and response times for the emergency vehicles. That's one of them. And the objectives that are met through the 3 E's, which is engineering, education, enforcement. Those are the 5 things that we are trying to accomplish through the traffic calming policy here. So how we are developing the traffic calming policy for the city of Port Colborne is there are 2 ways what we do. We did the review of the best practices for the 6 municipalities within the similar settings in terms of the population and the road settings within the Niagara region and outside. And also there's a guideline developed by the Transportation Association of Canada, which is for the traffic calming policy guideline that was developed in 2018. Those are the two things based on which the traffic calming has been, we developed the traffic calming here. So the TAC guidelines that has the 5 stages in which is being developed. So the first thing is the initiation and development, then approval, implementation, and evaluation. The stage initiation is to confirm the public complaint and the initiate screening and traffic calming warrant. Those are the 3 main items that covers under the stage 1 of the process, which in the initiation stage. And stage 2 developed once we have that the initiations completed, got the screening and the traffic calming warrants are done. The next stage is to develop the development, which has the initiation, the public survey, and they develop the alternatives prepared based on the data collected for during the process and the resident support. That's how the development stage consists of. The third stage is approval. Once that all draft alternatives are prepared, then the process will take to the approval for the public, presenting the traffic alternate measures, alternatives there. And once we get the feedback from the public, then that goes to council for endorsement for the traffic calming plan. Once that the plan is approved, depending on the funding and all this, these process. Then that goes for the implementation, which has the ranking within the traffic calming, that depending on multiple projects and funding available, that goes for implementation. Once that is implemented, that the last stage is evaluation, which has the, how the traffic calming is, effective in terms of whether the targeted speed reduction or the cut through traffic, safety, collision reduction, all those things will be evaluated in the stage 5. So now comes the going through the process of each stage. Stage 1 is the initiation, where the starts with the complaints from the public. The city staff will conduct the field survey once we see the public complaint and inform the listed in the initial screening criteria. So next stage gives the details about the criteria. And once that is done, the follow-up will with the residents within the 30 days to advise the traffic calming policy moving forward. How that is, based on the initial criteria, how that whether that falls within the moving forward, or that it requires a periodical review. That's how it will be taken care in this here. Once that is there, then the next process is the data collection. That provides gives the better understanding of how the current traffic conditions are there within that study corridor or corridors. That's next. The third stage in this stage 1 is the initial process screening criteria, which means there's a minimum requirement, that threshold levels that has to pass to make check whether the particular study corridor is eligible for traffic calming policy. That's the next stage. Once there's each stage, there will be the criteria is met or not met. I will make a presentation at the end in the process, the traffic calming policy process program. The last stage is once the screening is done, the next is warrants. The data collector will be run through the traffic calming warrant process to determine the need for the traffic calming. That's how those things are there, laid out. The next thing is the continuation of the criteria. What are the different criteria that are laid out in here? We'll come back in the later when depending on questions here. The next slide is the warrant analysis. There are 7 warrants. So out of 7 warrants, the minimum requirement is 4 warrants it has to meet to carry forward the candidate study corridor for the next stage of developing the alternative traffic calming measures. And now, taking to the stage 2, which is development, the purpose of the development stage is to create a traffic calming plan that is effectively address the identified issues. So that is the purpose of that stage, and which has 3 main stages in this process. One is the initiating the public survey. That's then the Port Colborne, based on the best practices and the working with the staff, it decides at least 60% of the total households with the direct frontage or flakage onto the section of the roadway in favor of the potential implementation of the traffic calming measures. So that the staff will conduct the survey, and each household will be represented by 1 survey. That's how the information will be gathered from the public. Once that is 60% is met, the next process is to assess the traffic calming alternative. There are, based on the criteria that require passive traffic calming measures or physical traffic calming measures. There will be alternatives will be assessed here in this stage, and all the requests reached in this stage of the process have passed the initial screening process, and the residents have indicated their support towards the addressing the problem. That's where it will take to the addressing the comments, which will take it to the next is, which is under the type 1, which is a passive, and type 2 is physical traffic calming measures will be dealt with. And here are a few illustrations that shows the type 1, which is a passive traffic calming measure, and type 2 is physical, like flexible signage, speed displays, or on-street parking are a few of the examples for the passive traffic calming measures. And under the physical traffic calming, we have the speed cushion, which means it allows the emergency vehicles to travel without any hindrance, and speed bumps, which will be laid out edge to edge of the pavement, reducing speed. You have speed table, raised intersection, raised center median island median, and curb extensions and cushions here. So these are some of the examples for the traffic calming that are implementable here. And once we have the stage 2 development of the alternative traffic calming measures are done, that goes to for approval, under which it goes to again back to the public for approval. All the measures are all the approval stage the approval stage provides the affected neighborhood resident the opportunity to approve the details of the recommended traffic calming measures. Once that is done, the next stage is to goes to the council for endorsement for the traffic calming measures. In the stage 5 of the implementation, so once we have the approval from the council and the residents' notification, sufficient funding, traffic calming measures will be implemented. The residents will be notified of the implementation timelines through the contact emailing list. When the multiple projects are there within from the public, there will be a categorization. The warrant analysis to measure the implementation will have, based on the pointing system, all the projects will be categorized, prioritized into, depending on the necessity of the project, and funds available with the city. And the last stage of that implementation, the evaluation, once the traffic calming, after a year, how the traffic calming measures are, effective in reducing the speeds, reducing the cut-through traffic, or what is the purpose of that traffic calming measures are aimed at. Those will be evaluated after 1 year of the implementation. And this information will be used in recommending the similar measures in the future. That's how it's laid out. Once that implemented, then the traffic calming policy has the provision for removing the permanent traffic calming measures. So, for which the 75% of the total residents on the street in question agree to remove the removal via a resident petition to remove the permanent traffic calming measures. The traffic calming measures must be installed for at least 2 years before acquiring the necessary signature on the resident's petition. If the traffic calming devices are removed, the subject street must wait at least 5 years before requesting a new traffic calming policy. That's how the timelines work here. That's what we do. Yep, sure.
Just to Rao's last comment, the reason this is here is there is an occasion where things have been in place for a while and the need for it, the neighborhood or the adjacent residents feel that it's no longer required. So it's not here as something that happens a lot, but if it was required to be removed, we wanted to have a process under which you can consider removal. So much like putting it in, you want to have a majority of the neighborhood affected by it supporting it. The same thing for the removal. You wouldn't want one or two individuals that find the measures as a nuisance to speak on behalf of the larger neighborhood. So we try to work with a majority rule. And then also, if you've taken something out with the supporter, you have to wait a period of time before the city would reinvest dollars and reconsider putting things back in. So that's just a comment around why spending investment of monies. And just trying to have that in place for consideration. So just arrow forward. So Rao kind of gave a discussion over the whole process. So the whole process, really, we've summarized it in a flow chart. And the flow chart shows you how you come into the process from the top and the different exits that you can have. So at the beginning, when you do get a complaint for speeding or cut through traffic or some safety concern, it doesn't necessarily mean traffic calming is a solution. So all the initial screening, the first initial screening, the city just confirms that the problem as presented by the individuals that have put it forward is actually a problem to the degree that's being presented. It's just a validation, and that'll help guide staff on, is it a traffic calming solution or is it just a measure for roadway safety that might need enforcement, targeted enforcement, things like that. So the 85th percentile, that is the guideline for traffic calming policy. If your if travel speeds are within 10 kilometers of the 85th percentile, sorry, if your 85th percentile is within 10 kilometers of your posted speed and you're happy with your posted speed, then traffic calming physical measures are not something required. If you'd like to get that, if you're at 7 or 8 kilometers over and you'd like to get it down closer, you might use line painting, flexible delineators, softer things that can go in very quickly and cost a lot less. If you go out there and you confirm that the speeds are okay, you exit the decision process and then you get back to the resident or the counselor, whoever brought forward the complaint. So the boxes on the right, the red boxes, are where you've kind of reached a no decision and you need to exit the process. But in no case where you exit the process does the process end, because there's still a complaint. You still have actions to do, but physical traffic calming isn't the solution. There's other things that can be done. And this process moves down all the way through. Traffic warrant, Rao talked about the warrants there. You have to meet 4 of the 7 items for it to meet the need for traffic calming, because traffic calming is expensive. It does have impacts. Rao touched on the fact that there are vertical deflections, humps, bumps, cushions, things like that. We know emergency services have significant concern over the increase in travel time if they have to slow down to cross these devices. So that's where you see the speed cushion, which is like a hump, but it's divided with gaps in there for emergency vehicles to go through. Yeah, just kind of moving down quickly. And then the other one he covered off was the warrants. So, not the warrants, if you have multiple requests, once you get a policy in place, you might start to receive multiple requests throughout your community. You have limited funding in any one year. You have to evaluate the projects against each other, which one goes first. You could do it on a first come, first served basis, or the other ones are which one has the more severe issues, and in that ranking criteria that was put there will help staff evaluate each of the projects against each other and say, this is priority 1, this one's priority 2.
Thank you, Nick. Just going to kind of touch base on how the traffic calming policy aligns with our strategic pillars. So, number 1, we got environment and climate change. Obviously, when vehicles accelerate beyond the prescribed limits, they emit more gases, air pollution, and through traffic calming can kind of curb that environmental impacts. And it's not only that, it's the solutions that we use for pavement markings to make sure that those are environmentally friendly and they don't have any impact. We want to make sure we encourage a welcoming, livable, and healthy community. To encourage welcoming and healthy community, implementation of traffic calm measures, improving conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, and residents will enhance safety and connectivity across their neighborhoods. City staff will continue to work with Niagara Regional Police to carry out enforcement measures, additional road safety measures in our community. Sustainable and resilient infrastructure. When warranted, the implementation of physical and passive traffic calming measures, such as road marking, speed humps, and additional signage, will make sure they are installed to ensure the integrity of the roadways are kept intact. Other than that, that's it for today's presentation.
Great, thank you. Questions from council? Here, yep. Councillor Hoyle.
Through you to the presenter. My first one was originally, I didn't see it under traffic calming warrant until you go down to the little boxes, but it is 4 out of the 7 it has to meet in order to be initiated. Am I correct?
Correct.
I'm only asking that because 1,000 to 2,000 vehicles daily on some of our streets is going to be a far-fetched goal, I should say, unless you're a main drag. So I just want to clarify that. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Baggett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did actually today receive the Elm Street speed radar results that were up for 2.5 months. And I just did some quick math while you guys were talking, and it wouldn't pass Elm Street, where 1,000 vehicles a day, if it is a local road, or I guess it is a local road by definition. Now, Clarence Street would be a local road also, or a collector from Cement Road. That's where I get a little confused on which is actually Collector Road in Port Colborne. Except maybe Steve can help me out because he lives here.
Yeah, through your worship. So you see Clarence or Elm Street would typically be your collector roads, and then you'd have your local roads that are more in the subdivisional areas.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. I watched the report. I read it beforehand, and it is somewhat complicated. It reminds me of a Big Bang Theory formula on the board. A lot of ifs. If this happens, and basically what I like to see, the bottom line is that the NRP commit to traffic enforcement X amount of hours per month. I think that would solve the whole problem in this city, if we could get the NRP to commit X amount of hours per month. And we wouldn't go through all this because 5 years for this and 3 years for that and stuff like that. And our guys are busy enough. And we put the speed radar signs. Everybody sees them and slow down automatically. I slow down if I'm speeding. I see it. Councillor Elliott brought up a sensor that people don't see that records your speed. Maybe that would be better to get a real true value of the speed going on here. But I guess about it, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thanks. Councillor, sorry.
And yeah, just to touch on that, Councillor Begu, we are in correspondence with NRP. When we collect the speed data, we can certainly provide them that information, especially the peak hours, as to where heavy traffic flow is and where it might be possible for them to be out there at the right time to be able to enforce and make sure that that any violators are targeted and held accountable. So we will continue to work with NRP. Yes.
Okay, Councillor Borgard.
Yeah, through your worship, in regards to that table 3.1, the initial screening criteria, where my co-councillor, Councillor Begu, mentioned the traffic volumes as well as Councillor Hoyle. Do we have any roads that are local roads that would meet the 1,000 minimum threshold of traffic within the 24 hours?
here. As of right now, so I'll use Wellington Street as an example there, where we took a 6-week window and the average daily count was only 150. So some roads may not warranted that 1,000-kilometer threshold. That is standard practice that many municipalities use. It is only one of the 7 that need to be met. You will notice that if of the 4 of the 7 there, if I can find it, yeah, so 85th percentile there. So if the speed is 15 kilometers over the posted speed limit, no other criteria needs to be met. That means that we have identified that there is a speeding issue on a road, and therefore we can proceed accordingly through a mix of passive or physical traffic calming measures. So of these 4 of the 7 there, when it comes to the 1,000 to 2,000, not all roads will meet that. But if 4 of the other 6 meet that criteria, we will proceed accordingly. So it's not to say that we won't push for it, but again, when there's only if there's only 150 road vehicles going down a road, and the 85th percentile shows that speeding is not an issue, it's the time and resources that go into that. It's we don't want to be pushing forward to implement anything that doesn't need to be warranted if traffic calming is not warranted. Excuse me.
Counselor?
Just expanding on that, this criteria, 7 that you have up there, so that is provincial-wide sort of standard practice?
Sure. Through you, Mayor, to the council. This is best practice. This is generally used throughout municipalities in Ontario, yes. There's always a little bit of customization of these, but these are generally, the idea with this is that no one criteria, other than the one that was pointed out, number 7, on its own will warrant straight to physical solutions. You look at the other ones, and again, it's trying to make the best investments of the limited dollars that you have. So, however, these are guidelines that staff will follow to try to be a repeatable process, but a council at any point, if you have concern over any particular road, could provide the direction to staff to move ahead with a project that potentially doesn't fit this. But the idea with this is there's enough that you would pick from that it focuses on areas where you have vulnerable users, pedestrians, playgrounds, schools, things of that nature that help elevate those ones over some other areas. But generally, yes, this is good and best practices.
Counselor?
So through you, so then that means, so there is room for improvement or customization, if you will, for us and still meet the best practices. Is just customizing it for our sort of municipality or smaller municipality.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, and we have tried to do that. The volume thresholds that everyone is focusing on, I agree that 1,000 on some very low volume roads, but usually in subdivisions, you're a growing municipality, you'll start to see more and more roads that are exceeding that 1,000 per day. 1,000 per day is about 100 cars in a peak hour, an AM or an evening peak. So it does look like a very large number, but I'm sure you have lots of roads that are in the 1,000 per day. And the local and collector definition, that's defined in your official plans. And we try to focus on those 2 roads because the arterial roads, those are your significant roads that handle commercial vehicles and emergency routes.
Counselor?
Thank you. Just one other question. I forget exactly where I found this in the report, but I believe, I'm not sure, I think it might have been the point system, I'm not sure, but where if there are roads that are more likely to have a collision or had collisions, they get higher points for collision history. So I'm just wondering if there's anything, if there's like not just collisions but the seriousness of collisions, like where they've caused serious injuries. Like there's Bell Street and Ferris where there's been deaths and there's been some serious accidents that have happened there. So I'm just wondering if something like that can be worthy of maybe an increase in the point system.
through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Two things. This point system here that we've presented is once you identify that a road or two require traffic calming, if you can fund both of them, say in one capital budget, that's great. But if you had multiple projects, this was to help distinguish a priority. Which one's which one should you proceed with first? To your point though about safety concerns with the road, I think that falls outside traffic calming. That would be general practice that engineering would do. If you have roads that have been identified as having safety concerns, collisions involving more than just property damage, personal injuries or death, involving vulnerable youth, pedestrians or cyclists, those should be elevated to their own study. They shouldn't follow this process. This is a process about coming into a neighborhood, engaging with the residents about potentially putting in physical treatments to try to manage the undesirable traffic behavior. If you have a safety concern, I think those should always be elevated to their own investigation and prioritized. Okay.
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chris. So our RVA created the policy with you. Is RVA going to be used as consultants to address the calming sites, or will this be just staff driven?
We'll be taking that over, staff. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. We will be taking that on once this has been implemented and move forward accordingly. So. Okay.
And then my other question is, I think back in February, Director Shapowski brought forward the report for, I think it was Clarence and the Empire Wilhelm. Does that fall under these traffic calming measures or something separate?
Yeah, we will be providing an update on Empire Road in its entirety, from Highway 3 to Sherson Shores. That'll be coming up tentatively at a forthcoming council meeting. We are still, to touch on the previous report, we are still in contact with the MTO. They will be doing an investigation in that intersection there, and we'll be working with them to get as much data and clarity and try to come up with some kind of solutions if there are any.
Following this policy that you're presenting now, or something separate?
Sorry, are you referring to the intersection of Wilhelm and Empire Road?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then
so that would be separate.
Okay, so something different.
Yeah, sorry, Wilhelm, Highway 3 and Empire Road there.
Okay.
That would be separate, yes.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Okay, Councillor? Further questions to the speakers? Seeing none? Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it. So the recommendation is that Public Works Department Report 2024-44 be received, that the traffic calming policy attached as Appendix A of the Public Works Report 2024-44 be approved. If I could have Councillors Bagu and Beauregard move that. Are there any comments or further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Next is item 8.2, recommendation for zoning bylaw amendment at 179 Mellenby Avenue and 56-56.5 Main Street West. I won't take a mover and a seconder, but I'll put the recommendation so everybody knows what we're talking about here, that the Development and Legislative Services Department Planning Division Report 2024-53 be received. That the zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix A of Report 2024-53 be approved. That the council require no further public notice in accordance with Section 34, subsection 17 of the Planning Act. That the city clerk be directed to issue the notice of passing in accordance with the Planning Act. We do have one delegation, council, that's here. And that is Rochelle Arock from the Biglieri Group. Rochelle, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Mr. Mayor?
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a brief presentation. So thank you to Mayor and Council for allowing me to present tonight. We have reviewed the staff report. We support the recommendations, but in support of staff's recommendation, we just wanted to make a presentation to briefly provide an additional overview and clarify some of the information that was presented at the public meeting. So just to recap, the property is located at the corner of Main and Mellenby, and the application is for a zoning bylaw amendment. Subsequent applications for site plan as well as for plan of condominium will come in later to provide all of the further details required to permit the development. So this is the diagram that was presented as part of the public meeting that shows the location of the building on the corner, shows the location of the park, Lock 8 Park, as well as the parking that is currently there. If you can see, it is perhaps somewhat faint looking at the screen. There is highlighted green parking on what would be the right-hand side of the screen. That area currently isn't used for parking and isn't used for really any park purposes other than lawn. That's one of the areas that we would be proposing to put additional parking for the proposed use. So the parkland now is approximately 10.6 acres in size, very long. So as part of the overall redevelopment of this corner property and to support our application, which is 101 units total, we're able to provide approximately 55 parking spaces or 52 parking spaces on the property, which means that we need additional parking to serve future residents. So some of the comments that came up at the meeting is, how can we provide more parking? Is a parking ratio of 1.25 spaces per unit or 1.1 spaces per unit or 1 space per unit the most appropriate? Looking at what the impact to that parkland would be in terms of removing the public parking, as well as is this going to be removing usable park space. As you can see, the area that's immediately on the right side, so I guess that would be on the east side of our site, is currently just grassed area. For all intents and purposes, it looks like the backyards of the houses there. This is one of the areas that we would be looking at putting parking for this private development. So if we were to use a 1-to-1 or 1.1 or 1-to-1 ratio of parking spaces, what's highlighted in green would need to be used for parking. This would end up impacting the current parking spaces that are off of Mellenby, the ones on the north side. We wouldn't be touching any of the ones on the south side that would have immediate access to the washrooms and the playground area. But what we would be looking at doing, and I'll show you in the next slide, is providing additional parking spaces to compensate for any of the ones that we have to take for our private use. This is also recognizing that the city is currently reviewing the park and the park design for Lock 8 Park, recognizing that you have the skate park at the very south of the lot, or south of the park, which doesn't have any parking, and it is a high use area. So this is the 1.25 spaces to 1, which means that it would be a loss of approximately 18 parking spaces at the north side, which we would be looking at recreating further south. We've graphically shown it by the Public Works building that's halfway down, but as part of the redevelopment of this park, we would be open to working with the city to identify the most appropriate spot to relocate that parking. We would anticipate that this requirement and this agreement, which would be a tri-party agreement with the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority, would be included in our site plan agreement so that we are held to providing that parking. And this is the 1-to-1 or 1.1-to-1 parking spaces. Again, any of the spaces that we would need to use highlighted in the green and the compensation in purple. And then just to give some additional 3D renderings of what the building is anticipated to look like. This would be looking north and then looking east towards the canal, and then looking south. As you can see, there's 2 amenity areas proposed for future residents, one on the 2nd floor and one on the top floor in the 8th. This area would be open to all residents and provide a view of the canal. And that is it. So thank you very much for your time. And thank you, staff, for your time and assistance through all of this.
Great, thanks. Questions? Councillor Bruno?
Thank you for the excellent presentation. I really appreciate these non-renderings and actual pictures using photography. And just as an aside, I was hoping that maybe our planning department could make that a condition in public meetings when presentators come to do that. I think everybody imagines what things look like, but there's nothing better than to see that with real life photography. I don't know whether it was drone done or satellite done, but at least this tells us, I mean, everybody else that's come to this podium has used renderings. That's not what the building looks like. And oh yeah, don't worry, it won't be that close to somebody's house. To me, from this part of the presentation, that's the gold standard that I think we should be shooting for. So hopefully you can do that. I'm just wondering if you could go back a couple slides to where you talked about 1.25, and then we can go to 1.1. Thank you. So, thank you, Rochelle, for inviting me and Councillor Aquilina and Councillor Baggio to meet with you and Mr. Fisher here, and I think you extended that invitation to other councillors. I think that for the members of the public, and maybe it's lost in the translation, is that 1.25, if people are looking at this at home or here, the purple down in there it's not near the Public Works building, it's the Seaway Administration building. So is it correct that what you propose to do is if you take spots that are currently used for potential tourists at the lighthouse and closer to the lock and close to the entrance to the lock for Seaway employees, you would actually reconstruct at your cost that many parking spaces elsewhere in Lock 8 Park for us to either complement what might come in our Lock 8 master plan. So this would be a unique trade-off where we may be building spots, let's say for argument, I haven't seen the plans, between the skateboard park and the Seaway building. This would help us defer some of that cost and bring people to a parking spot that's more central, that feeds families going to a pavilion, wherever that might be. So that's the juxt of 1.1 and 1.25 is those trade-off spaces in coordination with our staff if and when we build spots elsewhere. Is that correct?
Ms. LaRock?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Our intent would be that any of the spaces that we would need to use at the north end of the site around the lighthouse, those would be compensated elsewhere on the site, recognizing that we heard at the public meeting that there is definitely a need further south in the park because of the skate park, because of the popularity, and the current issues with people parking along Mellenby and perhaps creating a dangerous situation, as well as knowing that the city has started undertaking a review of this park. And I'm going to assume that one of those items may be looking at how to better service that skate park at the south. And we would be willing participant should this move through and should we get the tri-party agreement, that we would be a willing partner to compensate for the parking spaces that we need to use.
So also on that, thank you, Mr. Mayor, is that then the required number of parking would be then adjacent for the residents of the building.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We would be using anything that's shown in green. We would be using for the residents, maintaining some parking around the washroom, around the lighthouse building. Those would be maintained. One of the other items that we would be looking at working with the city at is one of the comments that we heard is that there's no curb cut currently along the parking area to get to the washroom facilities, and looking to work with the city to improve that situation.
Mayor, if you could go back to the slide that shows the picture, the aerial view closest to Main Street and next to Mr. Schwartz's home. That's it. So, without honing in on it on my page here, so basically what you've done there is you've provided a wall adjacent to that home with no windows or balconies. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We've recognizing that that landowner is not part of this development. We've tried to be sympathetic and reduce the number of windows at upper floors that would look directly onto the house.
Thank you. And just lastly, those units that face Main Street, so they face the front yards of those resident homes across from it, and that is a reduced structure. Is it 4 floors?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a stepped building, so it's the commercial on the main floor juts out a bit further at 1 story, and then the residential above is around 4 stories, 4 to 6 stories, with the remainder of the building stepped back at 8 stories.
Right. And just lastly, in that meeting with the 3 of us, Mr. Fisher was there, and we as a council have, over the last little while, been sensitive to that there's not spillover traffic onto the streets in front of people's homes. In this case, it's rather unique. There's not that many homes, but there is certainly no street parking. So my question is, if you're able to do this feasibility study the way you are right now, you're agnostic as far as if the council asks for 1.1 or 1.25, you're prepared to do that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're prepared to do 1 per unit, we're prepared to do 1.1, we're prepared to do 1.25. Part of the reason that we've shown the images and the plans about what the impact to parking would be is to identify to council that 1.1 would require this many spaces to be moved, 1.25 would require additional spaces to be compensated elsewhere on the property.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Baggett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the one diagram you had of showing the neighbor's property to the east, you said you had no windows and stuff going in the yard, but I do see windows on the ground floor and the side and in the back. So I guess through the planning department, through a site plan agreement, fencing could be made to be put up there for privacy on the neighbor's property for the developer to install and pay for it, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Schultz? Through the mayor, that is certainly something we could look at through the site plan process, yes.
Okay. So thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Also the, what was that called again? The study of the Niagara region was making you redo for the traffic. For the, how long would that take?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we submitted the revised TIS addendum to staff today.
Okay. And one thing I do have concern, the minimum landscaping area the city requires is 25%, and you want to go down to 10.8% landscaping. And the other concern I've had is the seaway, because basically the city pretty well has a, I don't know if it's written or unwritten lease for parking with the seaway, and also like the neighbor, Mr. Swartz, has a agreement for egress on the back part of his driveway in case the bridge just has some issues, I guess, or traffic jam. So with this, we have to redo our agreement with the city and the seaway. Yeah, I haven't heard staff report on that, all that parking spots.
Steve?
Yes, through you, your worship. So it would be something that the Seaway would have to approve for additional parking spots. The city does have a written lease with the Seaway right now, and we would be revising that too. We'd probably also be looking at a longer duration lease if possible with the Seaway if we start moving forward with our Lock 8 master plans, just to make sure that our investment into the park is secured for a longer duration. So all things to consider as we start moving forward with either a development or park rehabilitation.
Counselor?
One more question, Mr. Mayor. I guess you're a crystal ball. What would you think the Seaway would get on board with? Make a decision, yes or no? I don't know. Like, does anybody know? Years, months, weeks?
It depends how much pressure we put on them.
I think the mayor has the most pressure.
Yeah, we are always in discussions with them on several projects across the city, so if council is going to approve this and let it move forward, we would do our due diligence to get all parties at the table to come to an agreement that helps the development and then fulfills what council wants and what planning wants. So we do host those meetings quite often on several projects that are going on, so it's not uncommon for us to do that.
Okay, I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Hoyle.
Through the mayor, since most of my questions have been actually covered, Steve, are we actually, I know it's still the early stages, but is there a possibility or a thought of moving a parking lot closer by the skate park?
Yes, through your worship. So we are planning right now, but there are two options. There's a public survey right now that we're getting some final information. Those options do include a parking lot that would be north of the skate park right now, but south of that Seaway building. And that'd be to accommodate more centralized parking areas. So that would go in line with probably collecting fees, as the timeline might not work out just perfectly, but collecting fees and putting them in a parks reserve to build out that in a whatever time frame council may want.
Okay, all my other questions were answered, so.
Great. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So I'm trying to figure out where we stand with the Seaway. How do we do anything with this with no agreement between the Seaway and ourselves? And I guess the second part of that is, if we hold the lease on the park, is there anything in our lease agreement that says we can sublet? I'll ask staff.
We'd have to look at that Counselor, but I would assume there is nothing in there. They are pretty tight on this stuff. If we're the leaseholder, we're the leaseholder. But we'll have staff look into that for you.
So how do we go about making any kind of decision tonight when there's so many balls up in the air with regards to everything with parking?
But you gotta remember, the decision on parking is because there's a holding provision within this. Those decisions aren't made till that agreement is made.
Okay, so what are we voting on tonight then?
Allowing this to move forward with a holding position.
With an
A
H
holding
on it.
provision. Or, David, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So basically, council would be establishing the land use for the particular parcels. What that does is sets basically the maximums of what the developer could potentially do on the site, provided they reach an agreement with the Seaway and the city. If that, for whatever reason, doesn't come to fruition, they would still have to work within the parameters that are set by council. And if it is set to one-to-one parking, 1.25 parking, whatever council decides, they would have to meet that on their own property. So this essentially would be setting the maximums of the land use.
So basically, through you, Mr. Mayor, basically the Seaway holds all the cards to pretty much everything. If they can't get the parking on Seaway property at the 0.5, which is on the owned property, wouldn't be enough to satisfy us. Is that kind of like the deal falls apart if the Seaway doesn't come through and say, yes, you can use their land for parking?
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if the Seaway comes back and holds that card and says they don't want to move forward with it, then they would be working within the parameters that are set by council. So I think the mayor may have said that the H addresses the parking, but it doesn't necessarily do that. It addresses the traffic and other requirements from the Niagara region. The H would only be subject to that. The parking would still need to be handled, but in the fact that if the Seaway comes back and says no, then they would be held to the parameters on their own site.
Okay. And I guess this I've been thinking about the last couple of days, and I don't know why it popped into my head. But if we're the leaseholder and we sublet to somebody or give them the land, the use of the property, is that considered bonusing? Because it's not your land that the proponents are building on, or their land, it's our land. And municipalities aren't allowed to give things that bonus proponents. And I was just thinking about that. It's under our lease that we're giving them. And we don't usually do that for developments that, here, you get to use our land.
It's not our land, Counselor.
Right, but we're the leaseholder.
No, but then they gotta make an agreement to use that property for their use.
And that portion of the property would be
between them and the
their
Seaway.
own lease. It's not
Correct.
through us then.
Correct.
It's the proponent's agreement with the Seaway directly, not through the city.
Yeah, you're gonna have to have the three of us at the table though, to decide all that and figure out how the Seaway wants to move forward. They'll dictate what they wanna do. I'll tell you that right now.
And I guess just a couple of quick other things. The photos don't really represent how big that building is, do they? I mean, they're elevated shots. You don't have a photo of street level. Like say on Mellenby, standing beside the building, just to get some perspective. And the reason that I ask is, I was near a construction site today and they were building an apartment building and it was 8 stories high. And it was basically set up just the way that you have this, running right alongside, butted up against the sidewalk. And it presented itself as a wall. There's no other way to put it. I even took a couple of pictures of it. And it just totally took my breath away that an 8-story building that long is just an impediment to what you were looking at prior. And that's my main concern, is the size of it. Because I drove through Binbrook the other day, and I noticed as I was driving through, they've had massive development going on. And as you're going through on 56 and heading south through the old town, which has taller buildings, 2-3 stories, church spires and things, as you head south, their development blends right in with multiple 3-story apartment buildings. And this just seems to be a building that doesn't fit the area. And in the recommendation for the bylaw amendment, it says infill and intensification sites should match the pre-established building character of adjacent buildings. And that's as far from the adjacent buildings as you can get. So I've also been thinking, and as a comment, I'm just wondering why that spot location was chosen to build this. It just seems to be completely out of character with the neighborhood. And of all the places that are available in town to build, it just seems like it's plucked out of midair and say, this is what we want to build there. So I don't know if you can answer that question, why that site in particular, because it just seems to be completely out of character with the rest of the area.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll start off by saying that the property along Main Street, so 56 and 56 and a half, have the permissions to go up to 8 stories. So we actually haven't gone the full height of what's permitted along Main Street. The property behind that was fronting on Mellenby didn't have those same permissions. So part of the application was to put the entire property in one zone to allow for those heights. As to why this location, I mean, there are a number of factors. You're really not impacting any immediate neighbors. You have no, other than the neighbor along Main Street, all the other residential uses are across the street. You're right next to a public park, a very large public park that many municipalities do not have within the core area of their town. And then I think what's the biggest feature is that you have an incredibly unique feature of a canal, of a major shipping canal running right beside it. And I can see that as being a major sales feature because where else can you get these views? I mean, yes, you have another building that's gone up by Rankin. However, there are very few communities within the province that can say, we have this unique feature and that people come from worldwide to watch boats go through, to go through on their own boat, to take tours through the shipping canal. And you have an opportunity, and my client has an opportunity, to put a well thought out development that will provide additional residential uses and really use this property to its full potential. So why? Because this is a fantastic spot and it's within your downtown. It's an area that you want to see redeveloped and you want to see reinvestment. So I guess rather than why, a better question may be why not this site?
Councillor?
Okay, nope, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is directed to staff, and maybe I misunderstood this, but from what I'm reading in terms of the holding provision, you only have like the traffic impact study and then phase 2 of the environmental site assessment. And I'm wondering, because the Seaway is really the determining factor for parking, why the seaway is not part of this holding factor.
Staff?
Through the mayor, I think the reason we left that out is because in the event that they can't secure an agreement with the Seaway, there would be no way to lift that H without coming back to council for a full zoning bylaw amendment again. So as it stands now, with this zoning bylaw, if council approves it, they will have to satisfy the Seaway's agreement through that process in order to achieve the off-site parking. In the event that that doesn't happen, then they're still bound by the requirements on their own site. They would just have to lessen the number of units to accommodate the amount of parking they need on their own property.
So if I get this right, if we as council determine that we want the 1.25 for this property to go forward, and the Seaway doesn't come to the table to accommodate their plans, then it's on the development to figure out that 1.25 and make it work.
Through the mayor, that would be correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. When I read this report, and I look at page 10 of 17, under the staff recommendations, and this is with respect to, we have table 2, recommended site-specific downtown commercial DC zone. So I have one major concern here. We want to put a holding provision on this. And a lot of that has to do with, if you read elsewhere in the report, about the environmental issues. In fact, staff mentions an H for that. What I see here is that if the developer wants to go back to the Seaway for a tripartite agreement, the best way is to go in there with your final ask, not some options. And it seems to me that I read that if the staff's recommendation is 1 space per unit, then does putting the hold on it lock it at 1?
David?
Through the mayor, that is correct. It would lock it at 1 space per unit as the minimum. Doesn't mean they can't achieve more. That's up to them and to work out with the Seaway. If the Seaway wants to say they want more parking, that would be between them through the party agreement.
Here's where I'm going with this is we dealt with another developer recently who worked with the city, got his approval, dropped some units, and it was 1.1. I find it very difficult, and I wouldn't want to be hypocritical about having somebody else come in 2 months later and we give them 1.0. I am concerned that it hasn't been explained this way, but the holding provision then was going to have us hold it at 1 because that's your recommendation. And I'm just concerned why we weren't told that in this meeting, as opposed to thinking that we're putting a hold on it for parking when the hold will represent the default position of 1 space. So I don't know if you could explain that.
I'm not sure how it read in the report, and I can't remember how I wrote it, but the hold was intending for the traffic and the environmental site assessment. So I think the way we did it, we did come back with a few changes to the original bylaw that was presented to council. My apologies if that wasn't clear. So they came in originally at 0.5 spaces per unit.
Yep.
And the staff recommendation is now one space per unit.
Yeah. I just didn't see, David, not that I think you were intentionally trying to do that, but that there is, on parking, it just seems to be all-encompassing that your recommendations are 10 of 17, and there are all those things in there. And I'm okay with you presenting it that way, but because it's been a departure from something we just done, I wouldn't want to have left this meeting thinking that we had the option, right, to go further. So through you to the developer, do you have a scheduled meeting with the Seaway? Do you want to go in with a number? You want to leave things this much up in the air? Because I'd like to make a recommendation in terms of the parking, which gives you some clarity and some finality to what you're going to ask for. But I'll leave that to you. It's your development proposal.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't have a meeting scheduled with the Seaway yet. Part of the negotiation with the Seaway is being able to go in and say, we have an approval in place. This is how much parking we need. This is what our proposal is. Let's try and come to an agreement as to how we can all benefit from this. Are we open to council's pleasure at what that ultimate parking ratio is? We are open to hear what council chooses. I feel that based on discussions, it will either be 1.1 or 1.25 spaces per unit, and we are open to both those ratios as well as the 1-to-1. So,
Councillor?
Thank you. Well, I'd like to put forward that we deal with the parking, at least for tonight. I did really want to defer to my Ward 2 colleagues because it's their ward and they are hearing from the residents now and potentially after the fact with respect to Councillor Elliott's point of 8 stories. So I'd like to get the flavor on that portion from the other councillors. But on the parking, I'd have to say I want to be selfish for the city with it redeveloping Lock 8 Park, where we're going to need lots of parking. You're going 8 stores and hopefully doing really well financially. So I would love to get more parking for our citizens and tourists in Lock 8 Park. And on that basis, I'll put forward 1.25, and then you have a clear message when you go into the Seaway. But on the 8th floor, Mr. Mayor,
So,
I wouldn't mind hearing from...
Yeah, once the recommendation's on the floor, you can make an amendment to that.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions to the speaker? Okay, thanks, Rochelle. So, council, I'll reread the recommendation so we can get on the floor that the Development and Legislative Services Department Planning Division Report 2024-53 be received. That the zoning bylaw amendment attached in Appendix A of Report 2024-53 be approved. That the council require no further public notice in accordance with Sections 34, subsection 17 of the Planning Act, and that the city clerk be directed to issue the notice of passing in accordance with the Planning Act. If I could have Councillors Hoyle and Bruno move that. Questions? That's when it is. Yes, it's now.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move to, at least move this file forward I haven't heard anything negative about the 8 stories, which I think I'm kind of surprised at, but I would propose that the parking be 1.25 in the holding provision. Thank you.
Okay, so the amendment to the report, which is on page 10 of 17, it's under the minimum parking spaces, as it says, existing R4 zone regulations 1.25 spaces per unit. Proposed from staff was 1. The councillor's asking for that to be moved to 1.25. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Hoyle, are you fine with that? Okay, Councillor Hoyle, questions on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That's carried. So now we are back to the motion as amended. Any questions? No further questions? As amended, all opposed? All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. Okay, so on to item under correspondence is 9.4. Councillor Baggy has asked for this to be pulled. Council, this is with regards to a letter from the town of Lincoln, and they've asked for a resolution for urgent need for increased funding to libraries and museums in Ontario.
You're okay with this?
I assume, Councillor Beggy, you want us to support this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to support it and have our city clerk work with our manager of library services and director of museum to fine tune it to our own flavor, I guess you call it.
And we'll send it out to obviously the people at the town of Lincoln has asked. Is that fine? Okay.
That's fine, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Aquilino, will you second that? Okay, further questions? Questions on supporting this? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, that's our items this evening. We don't have any motions. Are there any notices of motion, Council? Notices of motion from Council? I will be bringing a letter forward at our next meeting for your support to the Governor of Illinois to support the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the state of Michigan, and the state of Illinois to proceed with that project. Okay, so that's my notice of motion. Okay, we have 4 sets of minutes. We have the minutes of the Port Colborne Historical Marine Board from November 21st, 2023, from the Museum, Heritage and Cultural Board meeting from January 16th meeting, the Public Library from January 3rd and February 7th, and the Downtown Business Improvement Area from September 21st and November 13th of 2023. If I could have Councillors Hoyle and Elliott move those in block. Questions to any minutes? All in favor? That's carried. Bylaws, we have bylaws 20.1, 20.2, 20.3, 20.4. If I could have Councillors Bruno and Bagu move the bylaws. Questions, Council? All in favor? Oh, sorry. Question?
Sorry, just through your worship, isn't the bylaw being amended for zoning? Yeah.
Yeah, it automatically comes through as amended.
Does okay.
Well, yes, because we've amended it, so it goes through as amended. So you're voting on the amended version.
Just for the records, you didn't.
That's fine. So through the clerk, 20.2 is being brought forward as amended in the council session. Okay? Yeah. Further questions, council? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so if I could have Councillor Hoyle and Elliott move that we go into closed session to deal with item 21.1, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer Report 2024-19, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. So we'll go to the back room. We thank everybody for being here this evening and thank everybody for watching. We will not be coming back on WeeStream for the open session. Thank you and have a good